previous discussion, we talked about tropical cyclone, which is a storm system characterized by a clockwise or counterclockwise rotating air mass around a central part called I that has a low pressure. The central part or the eye of a typhoon could be as big as 370 kilometers. Because of the low pressure core, winds flow inward, creating an updraft of rising air that upon cooling produces high winds and forms heavy rains. We also learned that tropical cyclone originates in the ocean, about 300 miles or 500 kilometers away from the equator. A tropical cyclone is called typhoon or hurricane depending on what specific region this stormy system occurs. Tropical cyclones need water vapor in order to form. Thus, tropical cyclones require warm ocean waters to be able to develop. According to scientists, the temperature of ocean water must be 26 degrees Celsius or greater. At the end of this video lesson, you should be able to trace the path of typhoons that enter the Philippine Area of Responsibility using a map and a tracking data. When a weather disturbance enters the Philippine Area of Responsibility, the Weather Bureau or PAG-ASA begins to monitor it. PAG-ASA starts monitoring tropical cyclones even before they enter the Philippine Area of Responsibility or PAR. But everything shifts into higher gear when the weather disturbance is already inside the Philippine Area of Responsibility. The PAR includes a big area east of the Philippines because this is where most tropical cyclones form. The PAR refers to a designated area in the Northwestern Pacific where PAG-ASA is tasked to monitor and issue warnings pertaining to tropical cyclone occurrences and activities. The PAR, it is bound by an imaginary line drawn along the following coordinates: 5 degrees north of the equator and 115 east of the prime region, 15 degrees north and 115 degrees east, followed by 21 degrees north and 120 degrees east. Next is 25 degrees north and 120 degrees east. Next is you have 25 degrees north and 135 degrees east. And finally, you have 5 degrees north and 135 degrees east. So there is an imaginary line that is drawn along the coordinates which was mentioned. Latitude implies the geographic coordinates that determine the distance of a point north or south of the equator. The Philippines is located north of the equator, while longitude alludes to the geographic coordinate which identifies the distance of a point east-west of the prime meridian. A prime meridian is the meridian in a geographic coordinate system at which longitude is defined to be 0 degrees. Together, a prime meridian and its anti-meridian form a great circle. This great circle divides a spheroid into 2 hemispheres. The prime meridian separates the eastern hemisphere from the western hemisphere. around the world at 180 degrees longitude is the international dateline. The prime meridian is the line of zero longitude, the starting point for measuring distance both east and west around the Earth. Let us have our trivia time. If we are going to look at the Philippine Area of Responsibility, there are other countries which is included in the Philippine Area of Responsibility, and that is a portion of Taiwan and Borneo. Borneo, a giant rugged island in the Southeast Asia's Malay archipelago, is shared by the Malaysian states of Sabah and Sarawak, Indonesian Kalimantan, and the tiny nation of Brunei. Therefore, we can say that Borneo is not a country but is an island shared by the countries, namely Malaysia, Indonesia, and Brunei. Now let us analyze these four different tracks of typhoon that enters the Philippine Area of Responsibility last 2020. So you have Typhoon Ambo, Typhoon Rolly, Typhoon Ulysses, and Tropical Storm Vicky. So the question that we have here is, where did the tropical cyclones form? On land or in the ocean? So I know that the answer is very obvious. It is clear from the maps that all four tropical cyclones started out in the Pacific Ocean. Tropical cyclones usually form where there is warm water. The temperature should be 26.5 degrees Celsius or more. Next question is, what can you say about the temperature of the bodies of water in the vicinity of the Philippines? Is the water warm or cold? Take note of the geographical location of the Philippines. The country is located north of the equator. Our country is located near the equator. Thus, it is warm in the vicinity of the Philippines, both on land and in the surrounding bodies of water. The warm water supplies the water vapor that a tropical cyclone needs to keep it going. Now let us analyze these four tropical cyclones: Harurot of 2003, Agaton of 2002, Yoyong of 2004, and Waning of 2005. In what direction did the tropical cyclones move? From the map, we can see that the tropical cyclones move in a northwest direction. Not all tropical cyclones move this way, but this is the general rule for those that start from the Pacific Ocean. But look at the track of Typhoon Nanmadol or Typhoon Yoyong. At the end of its path, it curves to the northeast. Many tropical cyclones in the Philippine Area of Responsibility do that. Instead of going straight toward mainland China, this part, they veer to the northeast and go toward Taiwan and Japan. There are different reasons why this happens. One, there could be a low pressure area in that region. So the wind in the surroundings move toward that region and the tropical cyclone is carried along. Remember, winds blow toward low pressure areas. Another reason is there could be a high pressure area tropical cyclone. So the tropical cyclone cannot proceed and is diverted along a different way. Now, for the next question, which part of the Philippines was hit by these four tropical cyclones? So, analyze it, the track of the typhoon. So, all four tropical cyclones hit northern Philippines or the island of Luzon. Note where the tropical cyclones start at the latitude of the Visayas and Mindanao. So, when a tropical cyclone moves to the northwest, it ends up in Luzon. Usually, typhoon has this path. This is the reason why Mindanao is not commonly hit by tropical cyclones, unless the following happens. Letter A. The tropical cyclone starts at a latitude closer to the equator. Or B. The tropical cyclone moves directly to the west instead of moving to the northwest. This is what happened in Mindanao in recent years. So on January 19 of this year, a new depression formed which became the first northern hemisphere tropical cyclone of 2021 and beginning of the Pacific typhoon season. In the case of Agaton, Yoyong, and Waning, where did they die out? Near land or in the middle of the ocean? Okay, tropical cyclones weaken when they hit land. They die out over land because they need warm water to sustain them. They need water vapor to keep them going. Even when the tropical cyclone is still in a body of water, it may weaken and die out if the water is cold. When a tropical cyclone enters the Philippine Area of Responsibility and it is on its way toward land, warning signals are issued. The following signals are used by Pag-asa to warn people about the approaching weather disturbance. Now let us proceed with the public storm warning signal. Pag-asa modified the public storm warning signal because tropical cyclones have become more intense recently. Remember that public storm warning signal is issued by Pag-asa every time that a weather system, particularly a tropical cyclone, enters the Philippine Area of Responsibility. Public storm warning signal number 1. Tropical cyclone winds of 30 to 60 kilometers per hour are expected within the next 24 hours. Here in the Philippines, classes in preschool is suspended once that Pag-asa raises public storm warning signal number 1. Next is signal number 2. Tropical cyclone winds of 61 to 120 kilometers per hour are expected within the next 24 hours. So take note of that. You will experience that wind speed within the next 24 hours. So once that Pag-asa raises signal number 2, the areas will suspend classes in preschool and high school. Storm signal number 3. Tropical cyclone winds of 121 to 170 kilometers per hour are expected within the next 18 hours. So at this point, all classes are suspended. Signal number 4. Tropical cyclone winds of 171 to 220 kilometers per hour are expected within the next 12 hours. And finally, we have public storm warning signal number 5, when tropical cyclone winds of more than 220 kilometers per hour are expected within 12 hours. So imagine that wind speed which is 220 kilometers per hour for signal number 5. Yolanda, with an international name of Typhoon Haiyan, is one of the most powerful typhoons to have made landfall in recorded history, with maximum sustained winds reaching 315 kilometers per hour or 170 knots, with gusts up to 379 kilometers per hour or 205 knots just before landfall. Imagine that wind speed and the storm surges or the daluyong that was experienced by the people in Tacloban. And also, Typhoon Connie, known in the Philippines as Super Typhoon Rolly, was an extremely powerful tropical cyclone that made landfall as a Category 5 equivalent super typhoon on Catanduanes in the Philippines last 2020.
When the eye of a tropical cyclone passes over a certain place, it is the winds at the eye walls that wreak a lot of damage. As it approaches, one side of the eye wall brings strong winds blowing in one direction. Then comes the eye with its somewhat calm weather. As it leaves, the other side of the eye wall brings strong winds again, but this time in the opposite direction. To be fully prepared for a tropical cyclone, you should also put together an emergency kit which includes the following: drinking water, canned goods, can opener, radio, flashlight, extra batteries, clothes, blanket, and first aid kit. You never know when you will need it. You must learn how to rely on yourself. In times of disaster, it may take a while before help arrives.
So at this point, let us check what you have learned from this video lesson. Question number 1. Which body of water is at the eastern side of the Philippines and covers a large area of the Philippine Area of Responsibility? A. Celebes Sea, B. Pacific Ocean, C. South China Sea, D. Sulu Sea. Number 2. Which point of the Philippines was frequently hit by tropical cyclones? A. Bohol, B. Northern Luzon, C. Central Visayas, D. Western Mindanao. Number 3. Which contributes to the strengthening of a tropical cyclone? A. Landmass, B. Cold water, C. Warm ocean water, D. Air with high humidity. What causes the storm surge or the daluyong that often accompanies a cyclone making landfall? A. Global warming, B. Low air pressure, C. Intense rainfall, D. Winds pushing waves onshore. And number 5, what can you say about the center of a cyclone? A. It has low pressure, B. It has high pressure, C. Its temperature is lower than the wall, D. Its temperature is 20 degrees Celsius. Alright, let's answer. Number 1. The answer is the Pacific Ocean. Number 2. Which part of the Philippines was frequently hit by tropical cyclones? Of course, it is Northern Luzon. Number 3. Which contributes to the strengthening of a tropical cyclone? The answer is warm ocean water. So remember temperature is 26 degrees Celsius and greater or greater. 4. What causes the storm surge that often accompanies a cyclone making landfall? Letter D. Winds pushing waves onshore. And number 5. What can you say about the center of a cyclone? It has a low pressure. So, congratulations and thank you for watching this video lesson. Good day everyone.